Have you ever wondered why so many office buildings remain brightly lit, yet the parking garages feel emptier than they once did? Why downtown districts that used to fill with commuters every morning now seem noticeably quieter, even though company logos still shine above the skyline? Why banks and investors keep referring to the period around the year 2026 when discussing commercial real estate? And why more economic reports are focusing on structural job changes rather than simple growth numbers. These questions are connected to three major shifts unfolding at the same time across many cities. The first shift involves the refinancing wave of commercial real estate loans. In the peak period leading up to and around 2026, a substantial volume of loans will mature. Because interest rates are higher today than when many of these loans were originally issued, debt service costs can increase. This does not mean that every building is in danger, but it does mean that property owners, lenders, and city officials must navigate a more demanding financial environment. The second shift concerns office demand. After several years of flexible work arrangements, many companies have adjusted the amount of space they lease. In several major markets, office vacancy remains elevated compared to pre-pandemic levels. Fewer workers in central business districts translate into reduced foot traffic. Restaurants, retailers, and service providers that once depended on daily commuters are adapting to a different rhythm. The third shift relates to job transformation, driven by technology and automation. Research indicates that a meaningful share of global jobs are exposed to artificial intelligence in varying degrees. This does not imply sudden widespread job loss, but it does signal rapid skill evolution. Cities that rely heavily on technology, finance, insurance, or administrative employment may experience these adjustments more visibly than cities with broader economic diversity. When these three shifts converge in the same place, their combined impact can become more pronounced. Persistent office vacancy can influence property values. Changes in valuation may affect property tax revenue. If municipal revenue tightens, local governments must balance service levels with fiscal responsibility. As services and job opportunities fluctuate, some residents and businesses may reconsider their location choices. This feedback process tends to unfold locally rather than evenly across the entire country. At the same time, it is important to maintain perspective. Many cities benefit from diversified economies, major universities, research institutions, and innovation ecosystems. Some are exploring office to residential conversions and other adaptive reuse strategies. The ability to adjust varies by region, and that variation shapes outcomes. What emerges is not a narrative of collapse, but a story about structure. Understanding that structure allows individuals to evaluate their own city with greater clarity. By recognizing which industries dominate, which revenue sources matter most, and how employment trends are evolving, people can make thoughtful decisions and prepare with confidence rather than uncertainty. When the three major shifts described earlier unfold at the same time within a single city, the real story lies not in each factor alone, but in how they interact. A city operates as a tightly connected system, linking real estate, public finance, employment, and daily life. Understanding this system helps explain why some places adjust smoothly while others feel greater strain. Consider office vacancy first. When companies reduce leased space or adopt flexible work arrangements, fewer employees commute daily into central business districts. This shift directly affects the revenue of office buildings. If space remains unoccupied for extended periods, landlords may lower rents, offer incentives, or accept longer vacancies. Over time, sustained lower income can influence property valuations, since commercial real estate is often assessed based on the cash flow it generates. Property values matter beyond the interests of building owners. In many cities, property taxes represent a central component of municipal revenue. When assessed values decline, local governments may experience pressure on their budgets. City officials then face difficult choices. They might reduce spending, reallocate funds, adjust tax policies, or draw from financial reserves if available. Each option carries consequences for residents and businesses. If spending on public services tightens, maintenance of infrastructure, public safety resources, transportation systems, and community programs may be affected. Residents notice changes in service quality. Businesses evaluate the overall operating environment, including infrastructure reliability and workforce stability. If a portion of companies or households decide to relocate, demand for office space and housing can shift further. The cycle does not unfold overnight, but it can gradually reinforce itself. Employment trends form another essential piece of this interconnected system. Cities that depend heavily on a narrow set of industries may be more sensitive to sector-specific transitions. For example, areas concentrated in technology, finance, manufacturing, or energy may feel the effects of automation, artificial intelligence adoption, or global restructuring more intensely. This does not imply widespread collapse, but it can reshape wage growth, consumer spending, and population patterns. By contrast, cities with diversified economic bases often distribute risk more effectively. A metropolitan area that combines higher education, healthcare, research institutions, light manufacturing, and financial services typically has multiple sources of stability. When one sector slows, another may continue expanding. Economic diversity does not eliminate risk, but it can soften the impact of concentrated shocks. Geographic and demographic structure also play meaningful roles. In some regions, suburban expansion has been occurring for decades. Central cities may maintain infrastructure originally built for much larger populations. Roads, water systems, lighting networks, and emergency services carry ongoing maintenance costs, regardless of current population size. When fewer residents contribute to the tax base while fixed costs remain high per capita, financial pressure increases. Without thoughtful redevelopment strategies, long-term fiscal strain can emerge. At the same time, it is important to recognize that cities are not passive. Many are actively exploring adaptive reuse projects, including converting office buildings into residential units or mixed-use spaces. Others are investing in innovation districts, transportation improvements, or workforce development initiatives. These efforts demonstrate that adaptation is possible and that structural challenges can inspire creative responses. Viewed as a system of interlocking gears, an urban economy responds to shifts through feedback mechanisms. A slowdown in one component influences others, yet it does not automatically lead to systemic failure. Outcomes depend on leadership decisions, economic diversity, and community resilience. By understanding this economic and social feedback process, individuals gain a broader perspective on the health of their own city. Looking beyond short-term housing prices or headline vacancy rates, it becomes valuable to examine municipal revenue structures, dominant industries, demographic trends, and long-term planning strategies. That broader lens provides clarity and allows for informed decisions grounded in awareness rather than reaction. With a clearer understanding of how real estate, public finance, and employment interact within an urban system, the picture becomes more concrete when examining cities that have experienced long-term population decline. Places such as Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh are frequently mentioned in discussions about urban reinvention. Many of these cities were once major industrial and manufacturing centers in the United States. They grew rapidly during earlier economic cycles, building infrastructure designed to support far larger populations than they have today. When population gradually decreases over decades, physical infrastructure does not automatically shrink. Roads, water systems, street lighting, bridges, and emergency services still require maintenance. If a city was originally designed for 1 million residents, but now supports only a fraction of that number, maintenance costs per resident increase. This creates sustained fiscal pressure, especially if tax revenue does not grow in parallel. Vacant residential properties and underused buildings add further complexity. Municipal governments must manage empty lots, address safety concerns, and oversee demolition or stabilization of deteriorating structures. When vacancy affects both office and residential space, financial feedback loops become more complicated. Low housing prices may attract individuals seeking affordability, but they can also signal limited demand or slower economic expectations. Another important factor is the transformation of traditional industries. Detroit is closely associated with automobile manufacturing. Cleveland and Buffalo historically depended on steel and heavy industry. As automation and globalization reshaped supply chains, factories reduced labor or relocated. Stable middle-income jobs were gradually replaced by automated systems or moved to different regions. The reduction in direct employment had ripple effects on suppliers, local businesses, and community spending. At the same time, higher-income households often relocated to suburban areas offering larger homes and different lifestyle preferences. Central cities continued to maintain extensive infrastructure networks while portions of the tax base shifted outward. This separation increased disparities between urban cores and surrounding suburbs. With resources divided, comprehensive redevelopment becomes more challenging. Yet it is important to acknowledge that many of these cities are actively pursuing renewal. Pittsburgh has diversified into education, healthcare, and technology research. Buffalo and Cleveland have invested in biotechnology and clean energy initiatives. Detroit has seen growth in entrepreneurship and creative industries. These developments illustrate that population decline does not eliminate potential. The critical question concerns the pace and scale of transformation relative to ongoing fiscal pressures. When the three previously discussed clocks appear within shrinking cities, the impact may be more visible. Elevated office vacancy in a context of flat or declining population makes rapid downtown recovery more difficult. Commercial real estate refinancing can be challenging if property values have not rebounded strongly. Continued restructuring of traditional industries requires time for workforce retraining and adaptation. None of these elements automatically lead to collapse. Instead, they highlight the importance of long-term strategic planning. Shrinking cities often benefit from affordable housing and available land, which can attract new industries if combined with education, investment, and quality of life improvements. Residents and investors evaluating these markets should consider both risks and opportunities rather than focusing solely on current price levels. Understanding the historical and structural context of long-term population decline allows for a balanced perspective. Some cities are navigating significant adjustments, yet they also possess assets that can support renewal. Managing the three clocks carefully becomes especially important in places where demographic trends add another layer of complexity. In addition to cities that have experienced long-term population decline, another group faces challenges from a very different direction. These are cities that expanded rapidly over the past 2 decades, largely driven by technology and high-income office-based employment. Places such as San Francisco, Seattle, Austin, Portland, and Boston became symbols of innovation and opportunity. Yet the very structure that fueled their success also creates a distinct sensitivity when the three clocks operate simultaneously. A defining feature of this group is industry concentration. Technology, finance, professional services, and administrative employment represent a significant share of local job markets. During periods of strong expansion, companies leased large amounts of office space, hired aggressively, and stimulated growth in housing, restaurants, retail, and entertainment. Real estate prices rose in anticipation of continued demand. When firms began optimizing costs, implementing flexible work arrangements, or restructuring to integrate new technologies, space requirements shifted. In many major markets, office vacancy has increased noticeably compared to pre-pandemic levels. This does not mean buildings are entirely empty, but it indicates that effective utilization has declined. Sustained vacancy can place downward pressure on rents, gradually influencing property valuations as income adjusts. This pressure becomes more visible when combined with the commercial real estate refinancing cycle. Many office properties were financed during periods of low interest rates, strong leasing demand, and high valuations. As loans mature in a higher rate environment, debt service costs increase, while rental income may not fully recover. Property owners may need to restructure financing arrangements or accept lower returns. Housing affordability and cost of living also play critical roles. During rapid growth phases, home prices surged as skilled workers relocated for career opportunities. If hiring slows or labor markets rebalance, purchasing power may shift. Real estate markets can experience adjustments that reflect new economic conditions. Such corrections do not necessarily signal severe decline, but they may moderate expectations that were previously built on continuous expansion. At the same time, these cities possess important structural advantages. They typically host major universities, research institutions, startup ecosystems, and access to venture capital. A highly educated workforce enhances the capacity to adapt quickly to technological change. When one sector slows, adjacent industries may emerge. Artificial intelligence, for example, not only transforms tasks, but also creates demand for engineers, data specialists, and digital infrastructure professionals. Many municipalities are actively exploring adaptive reuse strategies, including converting surplus office space into residential units or mixed-use developments. While such transitions are complex, they demonstrate an ability to respond to evolving market conditions. Public and private leaders recognize that maintaining vibrant downtown districts is essential for long-term competitiveness. When the three clocks converge in high-growth cities, the impact often resembles a cyclical adjustment rather than permanent decline. If refinancing challenges are managed carefully, if technology sectors continue innovating, and if talent attraction remains strong, temporary slowdowns can evolve into more sustainable growth models. Evaluating this group therefore requires balance. Industry concentration introduces risk, yet innovation capacity offers resilience. The distinction between adjustment and crisis depends largely on adaptability and economic diversification in the years ahead. Beyond the two groups already discussed, there is another category of cities that deserves its own lens of analysis. These are places with lower median household incomes compared to national averages, and in some cases, a meaningful reliance on federal transfers or traditional industries that are no longer expanding. Cities such as Hartford, Charleston, and West Virginia, Jackson and Little Rock are not global financial centers or major technology hubs, yet they reflect an important economic reality within the United States. The first factor to consider is household resilience. When median incomes are lower, families often operate with narrower financial margins. This means that during economic slowdowns, workers and small businesses have less capacity to absorb shocks. If living costs rise or employment opportunities decline, local consumer spending can contract more quickly than in higher income regions with stronger savings buffers. A second factor is reliance on intergovernmental funding. Some cities and states receive a significant share of revenue through federal programs, infrastructure grants, or public sector employment. When national budgets tighten during economic cycles, regions that depend heavily on these transfers may experience compounded pressure. They face internal economic adjustments while also managing potential reductions in external support. Maintaining stable public services under such conditions becomes more challenging. Infrastructure conditions also matter. In certain cities, water systems, bridges, and public facilities were built decades ago and require substantial reinvestment. Modernizing aging infrastructure demands capital. When municipal budgets are constrained, deferred maintenance can accumulate, leading to higher long-term costs. Infrastructure quality influences not only daily life, but also the ability to attract new employers. Labor market structure presents another consideration. In some of these cities, labor force participation rates are lower than national averages, and demographic aging occurs at a faster pace. When the proportion of working-age taxpayers declines relative to service recipients, fiscal balance becomes more difficult to maintain. At the same time, technological transformation and industry restructuring may progress at a speed that local labor markets are not fully prepared to match. Yet challenges do not eliminate opportunity. Lower housing costs and overall affordability can serve as competitive advantages if paired with effective economic development strategies. Some local governments are investing in vocational education, supporting small businesses, and improving regulatory environments to attract new forms of enterprise. With thoughtful planning, affordability can become a foundation for renewal rather than a signal of stagnation. When the three clocks converge in this group of cities, financial sensitivity often becomes the central issue. Commercial real estate refinancing pressures can weigh more heavily when property markets are already modest. Adjustments in public sector employment or traditional industries can significantly influence aggregate income. Because financial margins are thinner, policy decisions carry heightened importance. Even so, many of these communities demonstrate notable resilience. Local organizations, nonprofit institutions, and small business networks contribute to social stability. Strong community ties and manageable living costs can support recovery when aligned with long-term strategic investment. Including this group in the broader analysis completes the structural picture. Not only rapidly growing or long declining cities merit attention, regions with lower income foundations also require careful evaluation. By understanding income structure, revenue sources, and labor trends, residents and investors alike can approach decisions with greater clarity and realism rather than relying on surface impressions. Looking across the full picture, the three clocks introduced earlier continue to run: the commercial real estate refinancing cycle, the office vacancy adjustment, and the transformation of work driven by technology and industry restructuring. None of these clocks alone determines the fate of a city. What truly matters is how they interact with local economic structure, demographic trends, and the quality of governance. Instead of asking which city will succeed or fail, it may be more useful to ask three practical questions about the place where you live. The first question is about economic dependence. Which industries dominate your local economy? If that primary sector slows over the next few years, are there other strong pillars that can provide balance? Cities with diversified economies often distribute risk more effectively. In contrast, heavy reliance on a single industry can amplify volatility when economic cycles shift. The second question concerns public revenue. Where does your city generate most of its budget? If commercial property taxes represent a significant share, how might valuation adjustments affect fiscal stability? Does the municipality maintain reserve funds capable of absorbing short-term fluctuations? These details are often available in public budget reports, and reviewing them provides a clearer understanding of financial resilience. The third question relates to labor market evolution. How is employment changing locally? Are there workforce development programs, retraining initiatives, or educational investments designed to help residents adapt to technological change? When individuals understand employment trends, they can proactively upgrade skills rather than react after disruption occurs. From these questions emerge practical steps. For individuals, maintaining adaptable skills and embracing continuous learning becomes essential. For families, evaluating neighborhoods not only by housing cost, but also by school quality, infrastructure reliability, and municipal stability can reduce long-term uncertainty. For investors, analyzing demographic structure, revenue composition, and sectoral trends offers deeper insight than focusing solely on current prices. It is important not to interpret a city through a single indicator. Elevated vacancy does not guarantee permanent decline. Lower housing prices do not automatically signal opportunity. Rapid growth does not ensure sustainability. Long-term strength depends on balance among economic vitality, social cohesion, and responsible governance. Many cities across the United States are navigating a period of adjustment following extended growth and unprecedented disruption. Adjustment is a natural part of economic cycles. Some places will require more significant restructuring, while others may experience smoother transitions. The advantage lies in recognizing structural trends early and responding thoughtfully. Ultimately, a city is more than statistics about debt vacancy rates or employment growth. It is made up of people, families, small businesses, and interconnected communities. By focusing on structure rather than short-term emotion, individuals and communities can prepare with confidence. The three clocks may be running, but the direction each city takes will continue to be shaped by the decisions of those who live and work there.